September 11th, 2001 was one of the most horrifying events in the world. More than 2,000 lives were lost at the time. So many families were gone. This whole attack happened because of Al-Qaeda's leader, Osama bin Laden. He was the man that was in charge of this whole situation. Osama bin Laden had over 60 men, terrorists, who were stationed in many different states at different motels that were ready to carry out this plan, the plan of killing Americans. This is what they dreamed of, and this is what they risked their lives to do.
At 7:59 a.m., American Flight 11 takes off from Boston Logan Airport, traveling to Los Angeles. There are 92 crew and passengers on board the Boeing 767. Just 15 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 takes off from Boston, also en route to Los Angeles, with 65 people on board. 20 minutes after takeoff, flight attendants on board Flight 11 radio ground staff and say the plane has been hijacked, and the FBI are immediately notified. At 8:20, American Airlines Flight 77 takes off from Dulles Airport en route to LA with 64 people on board. In response, the Northeast Air Defense scrambled 2 fighter planes to tail the aircraft. At 8:41, delayed by 41 minutes, United Airlines Flight 93 with 44 people on board takes off from Newark Airport, this time heading for San Francisco.
Soon, this plane was the first plane to hit the South Twin Tower, eventually knocking it completely over.
Flight 11 into floors 93 and 99 of the North Tower of the World Trade Center in downtown Manhattan. Within seconds, the NYPD and FDNY are dispatched. President George W. Bush is also informed. At 9:02, occupants of the World Trade Center North Tower are ordered to evacuate, and 1 minute after the evacuation order, Flight 175 flies into floors 75 and 85 of the South Tower. By 9:24, the entire world is hearing about what's happened. Meanwhile, the passengers on Flight 77 manage to alert family members on the ground of a possible hijack. At 9:37, Flight 77 crashes into the western facade of the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. 5 minutes later, for the first time in history, all flights flying over the United States are diverted or grounded, and the White House and all other high-profile buildings and landmarks are evacuated. Meanwhile, the brave firefighters are making their way up the towers. Fire chiefs are struggling to keep track of their men, as many firefighters are not checking in and heading straight to the scene, and many have not been called but are rushing to help. By this time, 45-year-old Oreo Joseph Palmer, one of the first to arrive at the South Tower, had fixed an elevator and took it to floor 41, before running up 37 flights of stairs with 50+ pounds of equipment on, to reach floor 78, the South Tower's impact zone. There he met Fire Marshal Ronald Paul Booker, and they were both the only firefighters to make it to the South Tower's impact zone. They helped and comforted the workers who were stuck up there and provided information to the firemen below. Then at 9:59, the South Tower of the World Trade Center, the second to be hit, collapses. Oh 200 miles away, passengers aboard Flight 93 have become aware of the other hijackings and attempt to overcome the hijackers of the plane. In response to this takeover, the hijackers deliberately crash the plane into a field in Pennsylvania, killing all 40 passengers and crew. Shortly after, at 10:28, the North Tower collapses in the same manner as the South Tower, and just under 7 hours later, the nearby 47-story 7 World Trade Center also collapses.
Immediately after the event, no one had a clue of how many lives were lost. Many firefighters' emergency alarms that are designed to go off 30 seconds after a firefighter is motionless, indicating he is down, could be heard, and people were running away from the huge cloud of smoke and debris that the 2 towers collapsing had caused. It would only later be calculated that 2,996 people were killed. 2,753 of those were at the World Trade Center sites. The other fatalities were 125 at the Pentagon and 40 from Flight 93, which crashed into the field in Pennsylvania. The victims were aged from 2 to 85 years old, and up to 80% of the victims were male. The collapse of the Twin Towers caused such devastation that of the 2,996 killed, only 1,640 victims have been positively identified. 4 months later, the fire at Ground Zero had only just been extinguished, and it was around this time that a video was released showing Osama bin Laden taking responsibility for the 9/11 attacks. He and his terrorist group Al-Qaeda became a household name, and he became the most wanted man on the planet. In the wake of the attacks, the United States targeted the Taliban in Afghanistan, and Al-Qaeda lost their support and was no longer able to use the country as a safe haven, quickly losing its status as a credible and stable terrorist organisation. However, despite America's initial success in Afghanistan, it was the beginning of the longest and one of the most controversial wars in US history, as they tried to stop the return of the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, and locate Osama bin Laden, which resulted in the loss of many military lives. Eventually, in 2011, Osama was found in a secure compound in Pakistan where he was shot dead.
Good evening. Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
It took 10 years for the United States military to find and kill Al-Qaeda's leader, Osama bin Laden. Today, we still grieve and remember those loved ones that we lost, and we never forget this day in history.